Hi everyone, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn. I run the services at medcommsnetworking.com. So if you haven't been to have a look, you'll find resources, activities, services for the global medcoms community, by which I mean people who work in and around medical communications, medical education, medical publishing, the global community of medcoms specialists, and indeed those people who want to join medcoms. This week we've had a MedComms Forum, which was an open Zoom meeting, which talked about home working in medcoms, all sorts of different aspects of home working. Obviously, we're talking to you at the end of what has been a crazy year for everyone. This is December 2020. We've all had to go back home at various stages and adapt to different ways of working. So we pulled together this week on the 16th of December, a group of people from the industry who talked us through their perspectives on how the work has gone. You'll find the whole recording at NetworkPharma TV, but it is a hefty 2 hours of video. It's well worth watching if you can, because the presentations all complement each other quite nicely. But we've taken each of the presentations, split them up, and provided them individually in this way. So thank you very much for watching, and hope you enjoy. Cheers.
Yes. In theory, the medcoms community should be better placed than many groups to work from home, as many of us already do this all the time or part of the time. But does the evidence actually bear this out? Tim Hardman from Niche Scientific, Peter and myself decided to investigate this by means of an online survey during the early part of lockdown. Some of the data was presented in a webinar in the summer, and an article will be appearing in this month's Medical Writing with our final results. The data presents a number of contradictions. I'm now going to call on Tim to provide an overview of the results, and then afterwards, Rob Davies from Havas will briefly discuss the paper. Tim, over to you, please.
Okay, just share my screen, hopefully. Share. And go here. Here, sorry about that. Right, so just a little bit of background behind this. I've only got 10 minutes and there's rather a lot of data. So originally, when I started Niche 22 years ago, my theory was that everybody would be able to work from home, and it would be great. We could work it from a virtual office, and there would be no consequences, no rent, lots of low costs. And I think probably around about 2002, in our arrogance, we did an analysis that was published at some meeting somewhere, I can't remember, many years ago, but we did an analysis that showed that even in those heady days, that for working from home created a positive cost benefit to our employees, and actually to the company itself, which was as might be expected and what was the idea. However, as years went by, I started to have more and more members of our staff express things that you might call mental health issues, and I started to be a little bit worried about this. And probably around about 2005, we completely changed our model. It was not serving our employees well, it was not serving our clients well, and we went more to an office-based setup, although people were allowed to work from home on an as needed basis. So I've never particularly been a big fan of the process of demands that people be completely allowed to work from home as you employ new people. I do think that it's something that's pushed by employment agents who seem to think that it's a great thing, and it is, but I do think that it needs to be done carefully. And when we had the lockdown earlier this year, it came to me that this was an ideal opportunity to just test, just to have a look to see if it did actually have any effect on people. And I realized that it's a bit of a false study, because obviously they were isolated in many different ways, but this is what we decided to do. And I worked with Peter and with Stephen to set that up. We looked at the working from home environment, emotional well-being, self-worth, work lifestyle, and opinions of where they, what they thought about working from home. And you may have been person that replied to the survey. We had just under 800, which was really quite good. I was very pleased with that. As you might be able to see from the distribution, we did have an awful lot of ladies answering, not as many men. But they were most of all, they were in really stable environments. They had homes, they were, a little bit older, and most of them were based in the UK. And at the time of the survey, we had 97.4% of responders were working from home. Strangely, I'm not quite too sure who wasn't working from home. And effectively, if you cut down the data, we don't really have a great deal of time to look at the data. You could... People felt they were well informed with the jobs that they needed to do. They were enjoying the freedom of being able to work from home. The majority did feel that they weren't losing training opportunities. But if you take a look, there's about a quarter there that actually did feel that they were losing opportunities. And people still felt they had the space to grow. Everybody felt more or less that they had the equipment to do it. And that's where you have one of the first discrepancies start to appear. And one of the things that really, really worried me indeed was the fact that over 80% had not filled any form of health and safety assessment. And I think this is something that the industry really has to get a hold of, even if you're a self-employed person. And Peter and I can both tell you from personal accounts that this can go wrong. This can go very wrong. So emotional well-being, if you look at the distribution of the data, everybody was feeling particularly cheerful and well. But again, you look a little bit closer, people were feeling as though they were getting less sleep. They were not quite as excited and full of energy. But everybody was commenting, that we were getting a lot of emails from people saying that it was great working from home. And they were desperate to find out that to sort of reinforce this belief that working from home was the universal panacea. However, look a little bit closer, we had nearly 30% had comments about, answered their responses that they felt lonely or isolated at some point. Now, again, this is a false study because people were isolated, and but within 3 weeks, of the lockdown, we were starting to get responses on this, and it has to be of some concern. And again, we had good value, people were feeling valued, engaged, and getting the recognition that they needed, but not everybody. And I presume you expect a certain distribution, but as an employer, the question is, you can't discard, a quarter of your workforce because they're not feeling happy. And effectively, the discrepancy here was that what we actually did was we actually put some free text in, and we asked people for their opinion. And one of the opinion pieces was whether they felt work would ever return to normal. And it was strongly felt that work would never, ever return to the normal way of doing things. But we had 41,000 words of responses to our free text questions, which took, as you might imagine, quite a little while to work through. And despite the fact that probably 28% of our responders had some issues that you might relate to not good mental position to be in, everybody was insanely positive about how it's really good. But the only other issue was, if you're looking at what you might suggest to your employer in terms of ways that it could improve, the issues were around personal issues. I need to have a double screen, I need to have a good chair, and not really about the business itself. And effectively, it seems that everybody's very positive about working from home, but a lot of people who work for employers feel that somehow the employer is responsible for solving the employees' questions. And I think this brings us back to, you know, what is the responsibility of an employer? What's the responsibility of an employee? And how are we going to move forward in terms of finding a new way of working? So for the last, I don't know, 10,000 years, we've had a society that works where you virtually show up for work, you get paid for your time, and your employer is responsible for providing you with the equipment to do your job. And now it's not going to be the same. We're going to have hybrid models. Are we going to have everybody completely working from home? And who is responsible for health? And who is responsible for equipment? And business still hasn't changed. Unfortunately, nobody's going to give you less money or more money for working from home. The employer isn't going to earn more because of that. So my conclusion from, or maybe if I can speak for Stephen and Peter, the conclusion from this study is that there are still some serious discussions that need to go on. I don't think that just sending a workforce home is a wise thing to do. I think it needs to be planned, which it wasn't in this case. Obviously, lockdown, certainly in our office, happened within 4 days. And there wasn't a great deal of planning. We wrote a plan and we implemented it virtually within days. And going forward, I just think there needs to be a discussion between employees and employers, because get it wrong and we'll be paying the price for years to come. And that's it, really.
Tim, thank you very much indeed for that. That really was a whistle-stop tour through a project that took us probably, I don't know, to pretty 4 or 5 weeks to put together, and then many weeks to analyze, and even more weeks to write it up. And that's a very succinct overview. So much appreciated for that. Thank you. Rob, I don't know if you are somewhere there you go.
Hello.
A former colleague of mine. It's really good to see you.
Absolutely.
In your new role, you're looking a bit like a DJ there with your black.
You reckon? It's far less interesting, I think.
And Rob has just moved from being a writer to a senior writer, so congratulations to you. And so you're kind of sort of well placed to maybe comment on this, because you're sort of, you're kind of moving up slowly. You're not at the bottom, you're sort of in the middle now, moving up. What comments have you got on the paper? You've seen it, you haven't seen the final one, but any thoughts or comments that you might like to bring out?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think if I was to be proposed the question of, am I surprised by the results? I think the short answer would be no. I think that I'm trying to sort of cast my mind back to May and June, because it was, it feels like a completely different era to what it's like now. We've had two lockdowns. We've had, all the stress of everything going on. But I think that my answers to the survey fit with the general trend. When we look at sort of the emotional well-being and whether people have enjoyed working from home, I think 75% said that they were enjoying working from home, which I don't think is particularly surprising at all. I think about my experience personally. I live in Zone 3. Before, I was commuting into central London, 50 minutes every day on a busy train. It's quite a lot of money. I'm thinking about all the wasabis and pretz that I haven't had to buy for my lunch. And just the general time at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day where I can, I can cook more, I can cook a nicer meal, I can do more exercise. So I think, working from home feels like, I think I've enjoyed working from home. It's a nice change from going into the office. And I also think that the way that MedComms is geared up, I feel like it can naturally sort of fit into this working from home model. I mean, other people will probably disagree with me here, but, we're used to working long hours. We're used to working for, testing clients. We're used to, doing things, out of the ordinary and having to be flexible. And, as Tim said, we didn't have any time to plan for this. It was important that, everybody went into lockdown and got home really quickly. And it was just kind of thrown at us, and we had to do it. And I think my personal experience, I felt like, it didn't feel that much different from working in the office. I mean, my office now, my office was 2,000 people. So it was a very busy atmosphere. And going from, a central London office to working from home, it was quite a shock, really. But I think, it's important that companies sort of appreciate. I mean, we obviously saw that 87% of people said there wasn't a health and safety check, which was a bit of a shock, really, because I mean, that should have been the first thing on people's priorities. Fortunately, I got a chair really quickly. I got a printer, which I thought was really important. I got my VPN set up so we could work confidentially. So I think that obviously showed that the planning wasn't done, and that was a bit of a shock. I think the one thing that really surprised me was the lonely and isolated thing, because I think in my experience that was definitely one of probably the main issue of working from home, is that those interactions via Teams or Slack or Skype or whatever you use. Maybe a piece of your work's not gone right. A client's not very happy. You get a blunt response through Teams. It can really set you up for a bad day. And it takes a bit of time, I think, to set up that sort of social etiquette within your teams, within your accounts, on how you keep in contact with people, which I think is one of the challenges that we faced. And it's also worth pointing out that as a writer, isolation isn't necessarily a bad thing. There's been many times where I've just want to be left alone to work on something. And I've had the opportunity now where if something's really pressing, if I've got a big project on, I can kind of just turn Teams off and work in peace, which is good. I think it would be interesting to do, I mean, not to give you extra work, guys, but I think it would be interesting to see what people's perceptions would be now. I saw some slides pop up earlier, I think from Iain, who doesn't seem like working from home is a long-term solution for him. And I would be really interested to see, are people fatigued of working from home now? What do people think about this as a model for the near future? And it would hopefully today we can have some frank discussions, and we can delve into that. But yeah, that's just a little snapshot of the last 9 months from me.
Rob, thank you very much. Tim, could I ask you to turn your microphone on? And I just wonder if you could just sort of touch on the group who didn't do so well, the sort of quarter to a third who didn't do so well. Do we have some more thoughts on why this was? Was it just a self-isolation? Was it because they were a more junior crowd? Perhaps one thing we don't know is we don't know what they were like before this. Maybe they were all a bit kind of fed up and down, and it was just waiting for something like this to happen to bring out these characteristics. Any thoughts before we go on?
Well, maybe we are talking about the dilemma of the artist who works in his garret, but I'm a little bit more sympathetic than that. I think that I call me a radical, but I believe we're a social animal, and I do believe that social interaction involves more than just getting on Zoom. I'm a firm believer in working in teams and support and training. And I do think that people can be overlooked, always the noisiest person. And I have seen it all. If you've seen it, I've seen it worse. So I've been in this business for a long time. I'm not in MedComms per se, but I've had god-awful clients. And it's sometimes you want to slope out of your office or away from your desk and find somebody who can just make you feel a little bit better. And and it may be your boss, but you know when your boss isn't is busy, if his door's shut or he's on the phone, there'll be somebody else within the team. Now, I'm not saying that we are going to move back to the office. We've changed our policy at Niche. We're changing what we're doing. We're taking on board this, all the findings, and we're acting on it. But I don't think that it's something that you just snap your fingers and there's a solution to here. I think there are important things about junior writers. I'm very, very big into bringing juniors on and giving them experience, the learning. You know, there needs to be some one-to-one interaction there, because they need to get social skills. I mean, you know, come out of doing a PhD or doing a BSc, can they write an email? Oh yeah, you can teach them to do that, but it's nice to do it in an interaction setting. I just think that let's not just be selfish and say, well, that's good for me. Let's look at what's good for not only for the say the juniors, but also your boss. Do you know that it takes you a lot more effort to manage people remotely? Because actually the reason you see, one of the biggest complaints that people have is that they don't like people disturbing them at their desk. That's like the guy who's dealing with the rudder down at the far end of the ship, saying, that captain, he keeps getting in my way. You know what? I'm not going to turn I'm not going to do it, because I'll do it when I'm ready. And the Titanic hits the iceberg. You know, sometimes there are reasons that we do these things. But I just say my thoughts to looking at this data is it's very important for youngsters to be brought on and to have that social interaction for everybody. Very important to make sure that not just the noisiest people or the people that are always on your Skype or instant messenger of one type or another get seen to. And it's very important to be able to see through when people are not as happy as they say that they are. Give them what they need, not what they want, is a little bit my way of doing that. And I've only ever learned to be able to do that by standing next to people with my filters turned off, trying to go, what is it this person really needs? Because that's my job as a boss. You know, I take that and it becomes harder. And I don't know about you, but I get at my desk now. I get at my desk at 7:30 in the morning. I probably won't leave it till 7:30 tonight. So now I'm working 12-hour days, at least. And that can be an issue. And who's watching? You know, who's watching when you're doing that? You know, I would hate to think. I was working last night for a client in Germany, and I got an email from one of my writers at 10 o'clock at night, and I was very, very angry that she was doing that. That's not right for me. The client gets the pushback, not the writer, because the writer is going to pay for that in the long term. They're going to be tired. You know all that. I'm not telling anybody anything new. So I have my concerns, and that's why this study was done. You know what? I'd love to run it again. But there's a lot of data hidden there. The original report I wrote, Stephen will tell you, is over 40,000 words long. That was in my spare time. So there's a lot of stuff hidden in there, and we're still, trying to look at it.
Tim, thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you very much. As I said, that was just one presentation from what was an excellent afternoon on the 16th of December 2020, when we came together for a MedComms Forum to talk about home working in MedComms. You will find the other presentations and indeed the full presentation, the full recording of the whole afternoon, about 2-hour video over at NetworkPharma TV. Well worth watching. You'll find lots of practical tips and useful insights into how we're all getting on in MedComms in these strange times. So thank you very much for watching. Do please come along to medcommsnetworking.com if you want to see what else we're doing, and take care. Cheers.